This is an effort that has gone on for a very long time, and most of the people who've been involved in it will never, ever be known publicly.
It is 11:07 on the East Coast. Thank you very much, Larry. I want to remind folks at home that you're watching CBS News special live coverage. CBS News has confirmed that the United States, Osama Bin Laden, has been killed. His body is in U.S. hands. We are waiting to hear from the White House tonight. President Obama expected to make a statement any moment now. I want to go back to the Pentagon and David Martin. David, you talked about how nobody there is answering their phones, and it's been a very busy time there tonight. We've gone on the air. We've been on the air for about 20 minutes. What do we know? Anything new at this point?
Well, CBS producer Howard Rosenberg has talked to former CIA officer Hank Crumpton. And Crumpton was once the man in charge of the CIA's war in Afghanistan and Pakistan, so he was once intimately involved in the hunt for Osama bin Laden. And he said that he had been hearing for the past 3 or 4 weeks that the U.S. was getting close, getting some sort of location on bin Laden, probably searching first with a drone and trying to correlate what the drone was seeing with reports they were picking up from agents on the ground. And then obviously at some point that all came together, and there was enough certainty so that you could risk American lives in the attempt and send CIA operatives in after bin Laden.
Lara just touched on this, David, but can you tell us how tight was Osama bin Laden's inner circle? This is someone that the United States, the most powerful nation in the world, had been looking for more than a decade. He was able to avoid us at all costs. How tight was that inner circle?
If you're asking me, Russ,
yes,
I think it was a very limited inner circle, because he communicated through, according to those WikiLeaks documents, he communicated through one trusted courier. And he must have known that if he had a retinue of SUVs as his security guards, he would create a signature that would give himself away to any drone flying overhead. So his inner circle was both tight and very, very restricted, so that at one time there simply were very, very few people who could give up bin Laden's real location. And the story behind how this happened is going to be a very interesting one. I mean, maybe bin Laden got careless. He'd been reading stories about how the relationship between the CIA and Pakistan's intelligence agency had almost broken completely apart. Maybe he got careless for a day or two. Whatever it was, just that little something allowed people to start getting a track on him.
David Martin at the Pentagon, thanks. We'll talk to you again very shortly. For you folks who turned on your television not expecting to see your local late news, you're watching CBS News live coverage, a special report. CBS News has confirmed that Osama bin Laden has been killed. His body is in U.S. hands. We are waiting for President Obama to make a statement to the American people in just a few moments. We want to go back to the White House now, and our chief White House correspondent, Chip Reed. Chip, a lot of folks joining us now have not heard the news. Go ahead and reset for us what you're hearing there.
Well, Russ, just to recap, that we have heard from multiple sources that Osama bin Laden has been killed. Apparently, he was shot in the head. Certainly, the Predator drones that have been flying over that portion of western Pakistan and eastern Afghanistan for some time certainly likely had a role in locating him, but we certainly don't know the details at this point. We had been told that the president was going to speak to us 40 minutes ago at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Apparently, they are still gathering information, and the president is not prepared to speak yet. We're supposed to get a background briefing from White House officials in 5 minutes. That will probably be delayed also. But again, certainly this is something that has people here at the White House certainly pleased. It is something that both the Bush White House and the Obama White House worked for many years. It's been a decade since 9/11, of course, and certainly there could never be anything approaching the end of al-Qaeda without doing away with Osama bin Laden. You may recall that a week or so ago, some WikiLeaks documents came out relating exactly what happened with Osama bin Laden and his top deputy, Ayman al-Zawahiri, immediately after 9/11, that they drove around by car in Afghanistan after watching 9/11 on TV, eventually making their way into the Tora Bora Mountains, where Osama bin Laden became very close to being captured. He then escaped into Pakistan and has been there ever since. But now we have these reports that he has been killed and that his body is in the hands of the United States, which certainly poses an interesting situation. So we're waiting to hear from the president on the details and then get some more details after that. But the bottom line is that multiple sources say that Osama bin Laden, the perpetrator, the leader behind the 9/11 attacks, is dead. Russ?
Chip, you said the White House is pleased tonight. I got to think that's an understatement. Can you expound on that a little bit? How pleased
I can
they?
really only tell you by the mood that people are in. As I went into the lower press office here and found some people there, they were running around. And to say that they're joyous maybe is not quite the right mood, but certainly they feel that they've accomplished something extraordinarily important. They would not talk about it. You could grab them by the lapels and try to stop them and get them to say exactly what's going on, and they will not say. They rush back and forth here behind us every once in a while, back over to the residence, to the East Room, where the president is going to give his statement as they're setting things up. They will not say exactly when it's happening, but you can see the sense of excitement, really, that something that they have been working on for 2.5 years and that the Bush administration worked on for 7 years has finally been accomplished, Russ.
And just from your perspective here, this statement was supposed to be made about 43 minutes ago, but as someone who covers the White House, how unusual is this, that this would be?
It's not unusual at all. Even on something that is a situation that has already developed, a postponement, a delay is not unlikely. And in a situation like this, where they are obviously still trying to gather the facts and know as much as they possibly can, confirm as much as they possibly can from a remote region of Pakistan, it's not surprising at all that this would be delayed.
Chip Reid of the White House. We'll talk to you again in just a moment. Right now, we're going to go back to our terrorism consultant, our terrorism expert, Juan Zarate, who's in Washington tonight. Juan, we spoke a few moments ago. Let me ask you that question again. We probably got a new audience now. They didn't hear you the first time. How big a deal is this?
This is a huge deal, and I think not only should the White House be extremely happy and ecstatic, but I think all Americans should. This closes a key chapter in the war on terror. Osama bin Laden has been the symbolic, strategic, moral leader, not just al-Qaeda, but the broader global Sunni extremist movement. And you cannot imagine the end of al-Qaeda without his death. And so his death tonight, the reports of it, are just a great moment in the war on terror. And for those of us who were involved, I was with the prior administration trying to hunt bin Laden. To Laura's earlier point, the hunt never ended, but there was often periods of time when you wouldn't get a whiff of where he was. Fortunately, our intelligence officials, our military, were on his trail and certainly got him tonight. And I think it's a remarkable moment in the war on terror, and I think we should all celebrate it.
Juan, as someone who was involved in that hunt for years, how would you describe the frustrations that you went through when you were in that position?
Hugely frustrating. I've said publicly my greatest disappointment was leaving my position at the White House, not having seen bin Laden killed or captured. So for me, this is a wonderful night. I congratulate those who were involved, and I'm very thankful that they got him, because I think it's not just a symbolic move. As Laura was saying earlier, this demonstrates that there's persistence to American power, that nobody is beyond our reach, and that somebody who commits acts of terror against Americans since the mid-1990s will be gotten. And I think it's a great message to be sent not only to bin Laden in the inner core of al-Qaeda, but to other terrorists and others who may seek to do us harm. So I think this is a great moment for America. Russ, one thing I wanted to say,
sure.
The delay in the statement may be also because the White House wants to calibrate this, not just for an American audience, but also for the audience abroad and also for our enemies. And I think that may be why you're getting calibrations from the White House and some delays.
Juan Zarate in Washington. We'll be back to you in just a bit. I want to go back to Bob Ward on Washington Bureau. Bob has some new information for us. Bob?
Russ, we've talked a lot about, obviously, the death of bin Laden, and that's important, but we also have to focus a little bit on what comes next. So around the world, every government has taken note of this, and they have to move perhaps to another strategic position in terms of defense. We're hearing from one of our reporters in Pakistan that at key strategic places in Pakistan, they've already beefed up security there in a preventative way to try to anticipate what might come in the way of retaliation from al-Qaeda, if anything. But one thing that's very interesting that I observed a couple of hours ago as we were chasing down the rumors that perhaps bin Laden was killed, we checked all the normal Islamic blogs and some of the radical websites. We didn't see any kind of buzz about this, which is really interesting, and I think we'll have to find out how this operation went down. Presumably, Special Forces moved in very, very quickly. Apparently, were able to get his body, if the reporting is correct. But the word of that did not get out. I mean, normally when something happens, when there's a predator strike or something happens in that part of the world, the Islamic blogs are on fire as al-Qaeda and their sympathizers get out the word, and they use it as a propaganda tool. We've heard nothing from those sites, and the Arab media so far has been very laid back in quoting U.S. sources and Reuters sources. So I think we have to see what happens next. Here in the U.S., I talked to a Homeland Security official a short time ago, and there's been no move so far to put anything in place in terms of security or prevention, but this is something that will be talked about because we have to anticipate some kind of response, although this is a significant gut blow to core al-Qaeda, Russ.
Go to Lara and talk about that same thing. Lara, you talked about it earlier, as Bob just said. There are going to be a lot of Americans who hear this tonight, and they're going to say to themselves, okay, the war on terror, for the large part, is over. What do you say to the people who believe that?
Oh, no, clearly the war on terror is not over. And, you know, Bob made a very important point that al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, we're talking about Yemen and other places. I mean, they are as connected to Osama Bin Laden and the core of al-Qaeda as anyone. There's been a lot of debate of trying to separate these entities and deal with them differently. They all have the same ultimate philosophy, which is to destroy the United States and the Western world and return, you know, to an Islamic caliphate everywhere. And they are spiritually and ideologically connected. They are one in that sense. And so it is not the end of the war on terror, by no means. I don't think, you know, there's no one who's going to come out and suggest that. But at the same time, the importance of this is absolutely immense. And not just because Osama bin Laden is dead, but because, you know, I just spoke to Hank Crumpton, who actually ran the CIA's campaign against the Taliban and the search for al-Qaeda, and in fact was tracking Osama bin Laden before 9/11. And he is another person that said to me, the significance of this is also about penetrating al-Qaeda. That, you know, he's sure that signal intelligence was used, that's electronic intelligence, eavesdropping, that kind of thing, and of course overhead reconnaissance, surveillance from the drones. But there is no question in people who are familiar with how this kind of thing is done that human intelligence played an absolutely vital role. And that is absolutely huge, Russ, because that's the one thing that everybody said we're not very good at. That's the one thing that people say, oh, the CIA doesn't have any good sources. You know, even the Defense Department, the military intelligence, they don't have any good sources on the ground. This seems to indicate that that is not the case here, that we must have had, the U.S. must have had very good sources on the ground in order for this to happen, and it's about penetrating al-Qaeda. This says to al-Qaeda, no matter where you are, all over the world, that if Osama bin Laden, if the heart of al-Qaeda can be penetrated, a man who has eluded capture for the past 10 years, then all of you can be reached. And you know, that is exactly the message that the U.S. wants to send in this respect. And this is probably the most significant moment in the war on terror. The U.S. has been battling, and, you know, Bob pointed out this comes at this comes at a low point in this war. I mean, the U.S. has been ready politically to say, oh, you know what, we can't win in Afghanistan, so let's just go home. And, you know, and no one's really paying attention to the strategic consequences of a decision like that. This is not Vietnam. This is not the Russians. This is a different world and a different fight. This is a fight that will follow the U.S. home from every corner of the globe. And there is no significant step that we can afford to say, that the U.S. can afford to say, well, that doesn't matter. We just won't worry about Osama bin Laden. You can't afford to say that if you want to win this fight. You have to get Osama bin Laden to win, but getting him doesn't mean you've won. That's the simplest way to put it.
Bob, let me go back to you for just a second. You've covered Washington for a long time. Chip talked about how the White House is obviously pleased at these latest developments. Give us an idea of what this means to Washington, what it means for the Obama administration in terms of its clout around town, in terms of what you're going to hear probably tomorrow from your sources.
Well, this is huge for the Obama administration. There's no doubt this is a big win for the president. George Bush badly wanted to get Osama bin Laden, and from what we can tell, didn't really come that close after Tora Bora. So this has been a relentless effort, but I think the president will probably take pains to thank the Bush administration for putting the framework in place that allowed some of the intelligence operations to go forward. They've built on the Predator drone strikes that the Bush administration launched. The Obama administration has been very active there. So this is a big dividend. It will pay some dividends politically, I'm sure, but it depends in part